Welcome back, everybody. I'm sure folks will keep filtering in. I'm going to paste the link for the agenda. I've been editing up, sort of still in progress. Feel free to start putting updates in as well. Okay, so updates from me. All right, so I just got back from Bangalore, India, where I presented OpenWorm. And I'm thinking back to it. I'm not sure how much I spoke to this group about this in advance of going, because I think the last time was a month ago and I wasn't really thinking about it very much. In fact, I think I was sort of back and forth about whether it would even happen, but it did. It did in fact happen, so it was. I presented OpenWorm to a group of 1,200 people, I believe, were in the audience, and it sort of built on the scientific presentations that I've given in the past, but also adapted to a popular science audience. And I think it was like the only science talk actually that was presented there. There was not a live stream during the presentation, so I don't know that anybody else outside of that room has seen it yet. But as a TEDx presentation, it will be posted online, and I think it'll be fun to watch. The audience seemed to be having fun with it. I actually managed to make them laugh, I think, a couple times, which is good. So, but there was a lot of excitement and a lot of love for the project, actually, as a result of this. So we will see if there are any additional contributors that join us from that venue. But it's I think folks kind of got the idea, managed to understand why folks would be wanting to work on a project for the worm. So I think that went quite well, and look forward to seeing that up online. Okay. Second update. So you remember that we've in the past done journal clubs, and we haven't done one in a while. And we actually have a backlog of folks that would like to do journal clubs. But this time, I think to do it a little bit differently, also because I'm like looking for ways to make sure that my time isn't like become the bottleneck for the project. So I actually did a call for volunteers. You may have noticed on the mailing list, probably like 2 months ago now. So somebody actually responded to the call for volunteers, and it's a gentleman named Ben Shi. And Ben is an incoming mechanical engineering student at UCSD in San Diego. And separately, he's also actually potentially looking at doing a project to build a soft robotic version of the cybernetic model, which would be really cool. But we'll see if that actually materializes. But we did talk about it for a while, and I sort of described like what's in the cybernetic model and that kind of thing. So he comes from a world of like the soft robotics community, which apparently is not very huge, but it exists. But anyway, that's a little too early. It's too embryonic to really get too excited about. But the separate thing is that he volunteered to put some journal clubs together for us. So looks like the first one's going to be November 13th with a group that we'll probably be talking about brain emulation, whole brain emulation, which is obviously a little out there for us, but is also, you know, what some people like to think about sometimes related to the project too. So anyway, there'll be a formal advertising of that journal club, and we'll be soliciting folks to be panelists in this kind of thing in that one, and there'll be some others as well coming down the pipe. But journal clubs are starting again. Get excited. I know I am. I've missed them, and I'm glad. Very grateful to Ben for stepping up and volunteering for that. Okay, another update for me. So modeling hackathon happened 2 Sundays ago in sort of the reduced form, in the "We Miss You, Travis" form, because it was sort of just advertised by myself, and we had folks showing up, but it was kind of more of an informal, even more informal than we had in the past session. Folks meeting up on, yeah. So I'm going to butcher his name, but spelling it out there. It's Randall. Randall Keene. Can you? I met him. He explained to me how to pronounce it. I can't pronounce it properly. So I'm just embarrassing myself here on YouTube. But I've pasted the name in there. It'll be advertised, and we'll see. Yeah. So okay, where was I? Yeah, modeling journal club happened. It's basically all the results of it are up on Gitter. So let me update you a little bit on some of the things that are going on in that general space. So in terms of PyOpenWorm, there is a branch that is waiting to make it into dev that is still failing several tests. But the main updates are that it has the new connectome in it. It has a set of unit tests that check the new connectome data so that they're updated. And it also has what should have been some performance updates to make it faster. However, there's been a bit of an arms race between now there's more data in the database, which means that it's sort of somewhat slower. And so even though there are performance updates that make it more performant compared to when there was less data, it's still now pretty slow. So this particular update is waiting to make its way into dev in PyOpenWorm, and it's a little bit of slow going right now, but that is still happening. Then on the ChannelWorm side, Vahid is continuing to push that forward, wrapping a lot of stuff that he's doing into, I believe, his master's thesis. Folks were having a look at the interface. I think Rick Gherkin was looking at the different data sets that are in the ChannelWorm web interface and was looking to build out some additional SciUnit tests. So that's been moving forward. Abdullah there in that group was looking at why some of the numerical values for the unit tests were failing. So that's been moving forward. And yeah, so we need to have another session. It may be a little too late to do it for this upcoming Sunday, but we may do it then another Sunday after that. But that's what's new with that whole group inside of the project. Okay, and so those are the modeling updates, the PyOpenWorm updates. Okay, and coordinators. Okay, questions? Sorry.
So, you said the performance updates are merged in the branch with the connectome updates now?
Yeah, so there's like 3 branches. There's one that was the tests for Claudia. Then there was one with the changes to the insert file from Abdullah. Right. And then there was a third one from Mark Watts, which was the performance update. And I've created a merged branch of those 3, which is still not the dev branch. Yep. But I've merged those 3 into a branch, which is sort of like MWatts with connectome. And, right. And the MWatts with connectome branch is the one that I'm trying to merge to dev. But yeah, but that's the current. That's where it is.
Right. Okay. Good. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. And so those are kind of the main things. So I know. So because Travis has to go, and we have Bradley here, and we have Matteo here. There was a topic that I mentioned last time that I kind of wanted to bring up and discuss, which was about coordination. And since I think we're only probably going to have about 15 minutes, if you guys could entreat me for that, I think it's relevant really to everybody here. I think everybody can weigh in on it, whether you've been directly coordinating people, whether you've been indirectly coordinating people, whether you've been a participant in coordination with other people. Anyway, like, you know, this is sort of relevant to you. I think it's sort of the discussion about like coordination on the whole with the project. So let me just kind of review kind of what's happened. So over this past summer, working with Travis, I felt like it was a great opportunity for me anyway to think more about what it takes to organize a sub-team within OpenWorm. When we started the project, we were only one team, and so there were no sub-teams, and it was very basically peer-to-peer, and so we all just kind of did stuff directly. But as the project has grown, we've had at least 150 people in the last 4 years that have signed up on our volunteer form to help us out, and that's a large number of people. And some of those people are you, and some of the people have made contributions and have moved on, and some people are still hanging around and give contributions every now and then. But some people have basically been part of teams. So it has kind of raised the question, at least in my mind over the summer, of like, is there a process that we can scale of having coordinators coordinate other people, right? And so there's there's the ability to form new subteams. And also in the last year, there's been the OpenWorm group, which is basically like doing stuff no matter what, and it kind of doesn't need to have the energy kept because there's energy in and of itself, but it's kind of in the other direction of how do we continue to support what's happening there and integrate it with the whole. And then, of course, kind of the earliest effort in this is Matteo has made a really strong effort to set up the Geppetto sub-team, and it's been kind of running in a way that it's even taken on a life of its own outside of just purely OpenWorm, and now there's even other groups that have been able to benefit from that. So I think over the summer I was looking for ways in which we could think about this coordination activity as a process that we could all learn from, and that we could potentially put some metrics into place and just I don't know, have some shared coordination practices, because in the end all of these different sub-teams kind of have their own norms and patterns and this sort of thing, but we have this opportunity with OpenWorm that, like, yeah, I mean, people continue to volunteer to do things, and it's great, and we've made a lot of progress, and we've had a lot of benefits that have come into the project because of volunteer effort. So what I wanted to do real briefly is just maybe go around to the coordinators to not do an update on what's happened recently, but just to talk, like, just give like 5 minutes about what you've observed in the work that you've done to coordinate other folks in this space. And Porg, I think you're also an interesting one because technically, I think in the context of OpenWorm, like in the same formal way that like Matteo has been running Geppetto, you're not like organizing a standing meeting and running it. However, you have done a lot of like, I don't know, like lateral coordination in a way, or like you've kind of got like your roadmap for you, and you're able to sort of coordinate people and like help like guide people and push people in a direction. So you, I think, still have yet another model, which I think is worth maybe adding at the end of going around and just sort of saying like how you think about coordinating. Plus, you also have experience of like doing formal coordination, I think, of other teams. Your experience from the NeuroMel group, for example, I think is really relevant and topical here. So maybe that can inform this. But I just wanted to, would you guys be okay with this?
Yeah.
Just doing a quick like talk about this? Okay, great. So I propose like, let's start with Travis. Just give 5 minutes of like, none of the code stuff, but just the like, your experience of like trying to coordinate a team. Then we'll go to Matteo and talk to his experience. We'll go to Bradley, and then maybe come back around to Porg real quick. And then Tom, yeah, I guess, wait, so Tom, you're going to have to go, right?
Yeah, but that's okay. Bradley kind of knows everything about what I'm doing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I don't want to make this relevant to you, but I also want to catch Travis too before he goes. So, okay, great, thank you. So yeah, so quickly, Travis. I know that I'm sort of putting you on the spot here, but I mean, this is just, just what was your experience during the summer? What was it like coordinating people? What do you think worked?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. All right. I guess a lot of the things that I'm going to say are probably kind of self-evident. But anyway, one of the main things that I noticed really worked, at least with actually with most people, was like.
Hey Travis, you may need to really put that thing like up to your mouth.
Oh,
you're a little quiet.
sorry. Was I okay? How about now?
That's better. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So one thing I noticed over the summer, it might be self-evident, but um, basically being available when there's one contributor that wants to like push some aspect of the project forward, whether it's code or like documentation or whatever. Just being able to do one-on-ones with that person. That was where I saw most of the progress this summer. That other people contributed was when I was there, and not really like God in their hand necessarily, but just there in order for them to be able to bounce ideas off me or just ask me some questions. And a lot of times I didn't even avail of me being there, but I think just having that response, I guess, seemed to really fuel people. And I could do this with like multiple people at a time, and anybody I think can do that because like if the questions were like very easy and like just little like stepping stones mostly. So I don't know if that's too general or too vague. I can give a specific example, but does that make sense? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think also a question of like best practices with like GitHub and any other tools, maybe.
Yeah, totally. Okay, actually, in my mind, I was thinking about Gitter conversations mostly, being available there, and being able to respond like almost immediately or within like I don't know an hour or so. Uh, uh, Obviously, taking time differences into account, but yeah, just being available on Gitter was where I saw most of the action happen, and so I check the issues daily on GitHub, usually in my morning. And yeah, I mean, I definitely had to do that as well to get everything moving forward and coordinate everybody. Right. Okay. Right. And the other thing was assigning people to issues that I think gives a sense of ownership. And I found issues that weren't assigned to people rarely got done, at least in the BioWorm sub project, or they took a lot longer. So I guess yeah, those are a couple best practices I've observed.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. I'm taking notes in the agenda, and if
Okay. Cool.
help as well, feel free. By the way, I also Michael and his movement validation experience is also useful here. I didn't mention it before because I'm thinking he might not be fully in, but oh,
I'm here. I'm here, baby. I'm here.
All right. This is I can't see your video, dude. Sorry. Obviously, if you can be ready to speak as well on this.
No, that's his video. It's just as a really good poker face.
he's just yeah, I can't see him. Okay, so let's go to Matteo then as we're going on. Thanks, Travis.
Okay, so yeah, I suppose the experience for me has been for sure learning as I was going, because it's like coordinating an open source community is something that I did not do before. So I work with many people in context of like work, but it's different because your colleagues are kind of getting paid, so you can. There's a different incentive. Everybody is going to show up there from 9 a.m. to 5 in the evening, regardless. So it's just a matter of working together, while working with an open source community of volunteer people also has additional challenges, of course. So then, on top of what Travis was saying, I think it speaks to a more general principle that I found very important, which is basically understanding the contributor, understanding the person, understanding what is bringing that person to the project, understanding what are the motivations for that person, and understanding how you and how the project can help that person grow. So how can that person learn something new? How can that person unleash their potential and do something that they are passionate about? For instance, how can the person do something that without the project wouldn't be able to do otherwise? And this is, I suppose, my biggest takeaway in general. So realizing that contributors are human beings, and that you need to do something so that they feel like that they are not wasting their time. It's not about working for free or anything. It's about doing something that you care about. So that is very important. And another aspect that is as important is the social aspect of it. So having other people to work with, having a nice and friendly environment is really important. So in terms of not tolerating any behavior that would be damaging for the community, try and be as friendly as possible, and also to have fun, because it's like, why do hackathon works and why people do hackathons on a Sunday? Because essentially they are having fun. If it was not that, maybe they were watching some TV show, but they have more fun just being with other real people doing something that they care about. So the social aspect is very important, and it's like, from people that are interested in taking more coordination roles, I think it's very important to realize and have these different things on the forefront of their mind. It's about motivation, it's about what matters to them, and there is a social aspect. Everything else comes later somehow. And one thing that I'm currently working on with Geppetto, and I'm doing this so that it can keep growing also beyond my bandwidth, because it's like one-on-one, as Travis was saying, are very useful. But what if you have 10 emails from contributors? Do you have the bandwidth to do a one-on-one with all of them that week that you have to do it, because otherwise maybe they lose interest? Maybe yes, maybe no. So I'm trying to, with the help of the other Geppetto contributors, I started this last week, and I'm trying to build somewhat of a framework for contributors, so that there is, in a sort that it is a bit gamified. So this is the first thing that you have to do, and it might start with something very simple, like having a GitHub account, introduce yourself on Gitter, things like that, and then going up. Okay, to go to the next level, you need to contribute, for instance, this number of story points, writing documentation. To do to the next level, so that there is a clear pattern for you, because one of the biggest questions that contributors always have is, okay, fine, I definitely like what you're doing, I definitely want to help, but what next? How can I help? And it is not easy to just come up on the spot every time with what would be most appropriate, while investing some time on a sort of a framework in terms of what is a path, the things of things that you should be doing. I kind of want to run with this experiment, and I was chatting about this also with other folks at the last Geppetto meeting. So having this sort of progression as basically you're doing more and more. Okay, now to go to the next level, for instance, you have to fix one bug. Okay, or maybe you have to, close a card that has been there for 2 years. Something like that. Something that there is a reward, and something that also helps you contributing, so that you know exactly what to do. And then the more you go up, the more also duties and responsibilities you have. Like, for instance, doing induction to new contributors, so that I can rely on people that have taken this path and have been doing this for a longer time, so that they help me coordinating and working with new people as they come on board. And a component that I also want to add to this is the training part. So that as you advance in these levels, you get 1 hour of training, 2 hours of training. And it might be you learn how to use this technology for somebody in the group that has been using it. So I'm trying to think along these lines, and I will probably have a proposal at some point for the rest of the people that are contributing in the next weeks. But just to conclude, I want to add that I was at the FOSSA meeting in Nantes on September 23rd, and it was a very nice community of folks, all interested in open, all interested in sharing, and I presented OpenWorm. Geppetto also presented open source brain, and they were very interested in how we organize ourselves. They were very interested in what kind of things they could learn from us. And people are looking at us as, as a beacon of, a sort of big-ish project in open science that is managing to put people together. So after having been at that meeting, I feel an extra level of responsibility towards trying to do this right and trying to do it right in a way that it can also be shared with other people, so that the same model can also be applied to other open source projects out there.
Okay, awesome. That's very topical and relevant, actually. But we're having this conversation just after you got back from that.
Can I just jump in? I got to leave in a couple of seconds. Can I have a moment, Stephen? If you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah. What Matteo said about motivating people and gamifying things through GitHub, and I think even just closing an issue is sort of like a reward in itself. It feels good in some way. I totally agree with that. There's a lot more, I guess, about motivating people in open source software in this book that Stephen showed me at the start of the summer, and that helped immensely. So I'm just pasting the link there. It's an online book. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have a chance, just check that out. That really helped me this summer doing the coordinating and things. You can have a look at the index, but there's certain chapters there that are going to be obviously more technical, but the ones about organizing, so like chapter 5 and 6, they were great. So I've got to run now, guys. So thanks for giving me your time. And I'll check the rest of the meeting out on YouTube. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Bye.
By the way, for the UK folks, Travis is in London now. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe we should then coordinate and go for a beer or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then so great stuff. So let's keep going around. And I guess I would also say, Matteo, as you're thinking about this framework, like maybe we can think about how to like raise it even above Geppetto, or like see if there are things which we could bring up to the level of like in all of OpenWorm in what you're thinking about, and not Geppetto, or potentially you can try it first as an experiment and then we can see what works and do it after. But yeah.
I think it is something that can share a template.
Right.
That then gets customized per project, because obviously the things that maybe would make sense in a pure software project like Geppetto would be slightly different when there's open science. So there's other areas that we might want to incentivize people. But I definitely think that there is an abstract class somewhere, some common ground that we can reuse across.
Okay, awesome. So then let's go to Bradley. And,
okay.
And
so I'm involved in DevaWorm, and it's a little bit different than a lot of the other projects because we're really dealing with data analysis, and we're dealing with we don't have like a lot of, it's not like focused on code. So we have contributors like Tom, who's actually doing simulation, and then Dick Gordon and I who are doing more like data analysis and other things like that. So I met up with Stephen at the International Worm meeting this summer, and we went over some methods for organizing the project. So what I adopted for DevaWorm was to use Waffle and Gitter. So I'm using the Waffle board to assign tasks to people. But in the way we do it, we don't really have a lot of deliverables. So it's a very general thing. So we have like things that you might want to do, topics that things that we might need in an analysis or in the next step in the project. And so it's a very general thing. If you go to the Waffle board, it's got some general thing that you wouldn't have in a software collaboration, but that's the way we're doing it. We also use Gitter, so we've got or if we find something like a data set that's interesting, we'll post a link to it. And that works for us because we want to know, we want to explore certain areas. How do we further a project? How do we expand it? How do we contract, focus it in? And then I've just been using my own website. Actually, I have on my own website, I have like a DevaWorm page, and I have it organized by, so it's largely talks and small papers and things like that. One of the things I've started doing, and I did it with Tom, and I'm going to do it with myself, is to have updates as slideshows, and then have it recorded as a video. We do this because we're collaborating, and we often run into technicalities, and so having that video of the presentation, you just record it on your laptop and go through the slides, but you explain what it is, and then we post it online, and so you have this repository of the slideshow, maybe a small technical paper, and then the presentation, and it's all right there, and is an update. And then we also have other submissions that we've made. So it's actually, because we're using GitHub, but we're not using it in the conventional way. We don't have a lot of, it's not code heavy. We have some data analysis files, some data files, which we actually store on Google Drive. And that works out too because we can access data if we want and have it all linked together, so we know where everything is.
Awesome. Yeah, that's also it's interesting for us to think about that too because there are more scientific parts of the project, and actually we'll go to Michael next too. But in terms of data analysis, so that is it's important for us to think about that in best practices as we want to do more analysis, especially like more analysis of the things that we produce in terms of like what does the simulation actually do when we run it. What are the scientific conclusions that we can draw from that? So actually, some of those practices that you're putting into place may be best practices for us on the analysis side, whereas I think we're really strong on the code side. Maybe we need more on the analysis side. So that's actually really good. Thank you for that. Cool. Okay, so Michael, the Frozen Man, let's jump into you then. If you can tell us about some validation stuff. Or if you are actually there, because you're muted. Michael! Okay. I think he maybe have such a good poker face that he's frozen for the moment. So we'll come back to him. So Porg, maybe you can talk about your experience coordinating folks and all the different ways.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you. When your bandwidth seems maybe a little slow.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so obviously I've got a little bit of experience in attempting to organize a community around NeuroML and open source brain. It's definitely in both cases a lot less formal, simply because, well, we don't necessarily have time to do as much coordination that it goes on in OpenWorm or even attempt to. I find in general that everybody involved has parts of it's difficult enough to get people involved. I think a big driver for actually what people can do and will do is not just time but also what they actually have funding for. So yeah, again, it's probably slightly different in the more academic focus we have in the wider computational community, but certainly if you get somebody involved in this process, you need to make sure that what you would like them to do, what they want to do is something for what their plans are, and yeah, anytime I tend to get somebody working on a project and who's more trained, I just make sure that that's something that their project leader is interested in working on, that they see some output further down the line that would be useful for them in their field, in their papers, something like that. So I mean, there are different demands and different motivations of people within this community. I always think that if I contact somebody, if I want something from them, also that there also has to be something that concrete that they get back. So anytime if I need somebody to send some code or anything, I'll always offer them something and try to get figure out what they need, make sure it's a win-win situation. Yeah, generally it's a different set of demands. It's not something that, as I say, I can kind of just at the moment at least try to organise one kind of big process for getting lots of volunteers on board. It has to be focused, just because there's limited people and limited amount of time on both sides. So.
Hey, Porig, can I ask you something? So what's an example of something that someone else might want that you can give to them in a setting where you obviously you can't give them a big salary? So what is it that you'd be able to offer in exchange?
Are you breaking up? Sorry.
Uh-oh. I'll try it again. What is an example of something that...
No.
Am I breaking up for everybody else too?
No, I can't hear you. My fault.
I can hear you.
Interesting.
No, sorry. I think what. So was your question basically what types of things do people want back for what?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, in the general sense, most of the interactions I have with people in computational neuroscience is either getting their simulator or tool more NeurML compliant, or converting their model into NeurML. So if somebody has an interesting model that's well published, I'll contact them saying, okay, well, would you like to help convert this model into NeurML? It'll be useful, people will see it, it'll be on Open Source Brain, you can view it in 3D and get them hooked in that way. Also, for if I want to get somebody's simulator supporting NeurML, then it's something that I'll say to them, okay, well, it'll be more useful if it's NeurML compliant, and most people are happy to jump on board there. It's usually more of a one-way situation with simulators and so on, because you need to get NeurML support, and there's a lot of development on that side. But yeah, I think people generally are open to at least informally being some kind of collaborator on this if they see some kind of benefit out of it.
Okay, I'm assuming that answered Michael's question. Okay, so Porg, I was having a little trouble hearing you, but basically, I think the two things I got out was, yeah, understanding what sort of reciprocity can be created for the effort that other folks are putting in, and also that especially working with academic labs, it's just important that, like, in order for them to really devote time, that they have an appropriate funding stream that could fit into the collaborative effort, and just making sure that that's the case. Those are kind of the two things I got out. Sorry, I know you said a few other things, but I was just having trouble understanding what I said. But that's good. Okay, so yeah, that's a good another perspective on these things, and interfacing with the academic community is something that is important for us to consider as well. A different channel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, it's certainly a different setup and different approaches needed than the kind of volunteer, wider kind of computational framework that community that OpenWorm is going for. But yeah, I mean, it has to be done because of the academics. One other point I just wanted to make, you spoke about comparing the other systems like the way Geppetto is organized and DevoWorm and so on. One impression I get is that you can't necessarily force these type of things. You can't necessarily plan it in advance. I mean, Geppetto wouldn't have happened without Geppetto people wanting to do that. You can't necessarily just decide on a process and then one particular area, one particular technologies will be improved because of that process. I think these things happen. People have different focuses. People get on board, and yeah, I mean it's great facilitating people getting on board, and things will happen. But there's only so much you can do defining the process to ensure that that happens.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I think the thing here is like, are there ways in which all the sub teams can support each other, learn from each other, share tools? Like, I guess Bradley, I guess Waffle and Gitter are working out for you. I think those are things that you took as cues from other projects. I think those are things we talked about, right? So there was
I think,
yeah. Sorry.
yeah. Well, I mean, it has to be adapted a little bit, but and then having everything sort of in a repository. I think even if it's whether it's code or data or whatever, somewhere where anyone can share or see it if they're interested. There's another good cross-platform thing.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Okay, so let's go to Michael then. So also another example of both coordinating folks that come from the general public, but also working with a lab quite a bit. Michael, are you there? No?
I am there, yes. I am here.
Yeah.
Not there, I'm here.
Yes.
Yes, so I wanted to sort of make this observation that I think in the past I've been overly optimistic about the multiplier I can achieve by, having a 1 hour debrief with someone who's an initial interested person, and then assuming that they're going to immediately, do work, or maybe in a less extreme situation, even someone who's been around for a little while, and I'm going to talk to them for a little while, or send them an email, or we're going to have a little conversation, and then assume that that's going to result in, a vast amount of work. But I think the reality is that it takes quite a while for most people to achieve a kind of escape velocity, if you will, where they're working totally independently and with initiative. And so what I've sort of discovered through trial and error is that the multiplier is close to 1, if not less than 1, in terms of the number of hours that you're investing of your own time, and the hours of productivity that you're going to get out of somebody new. I guess this is, anyway, yeah, so I don't know how obvious that is, but that's my observation. So certainly it requires not only an investment of time to onboard someone and make sure that they, they're comfortable and all their questions are being answered, but also just being very consistent in terms of time. Like when I was first getting on board with OpenWorm, Jim and we had weekly meetings, or even sometimes more than weekly meetings, where as a result of that, I mean, I had a lot of other things going on, but that sort of pace of things kept OpenWorm front of mind, and so eventually, it got to the point where I had enough of OpenWorm loaded into my mind, in the back of my mind, that I was just thinking about it even without these meetings with Jim, and then I reached perhaps takeoff velocity, and that I was doing things on my own initiative. So having the time and the energy and the organization to continually talk to people and engage with them, I've found is necessary to get them to the point where they're productive contributors.
Cool. Right, so I took down this list of things of folks saying, and I feel like everybody actually had different enough things to say that they've all kind of been fitting together into a nice tapestry. Joe, just since we've gone around here, I wondered if you wanted to weigh in as well. I think you've also obviously coordinated people, somewhat in the context of WormSim, somewhat in other contexts. Yours has been more like a project that we knew was going to be like temporary. But did you want to say anything, about this?
The difference between all these other sub-projects and WormSim is that WormSim was tightly integrated with Geppetto, so we kind of rolled it in with the Geppetto meetings, and there were interaction outside of that, but I think all the stuff Matteo said is relevant. I don't have anything to add. It was like kind of it was built on top of Geppetto. There was a part that was outside of Geppetto, but we kind of use the same sprints that we were using for the Geppetto stuff, and as a way to keep things synced up. And they were tightly, not coupled, but I mean, WormSim is built on Geppetto, so kind of waiting for the Geppetto release and doing work on Geppetto, adding features that will go out with the Geppetto release, and all the contributors who were working on WormSim were showing up at the Geppetto meeting mostly. Yeah, sometimes the only thing I can add is sometimes we have seen a pattern where some people don't like meetings, but they are really good contributors. And if you ask them to show up at the meeting, they won't, or they get bored, and so you need to cater for that. You need to kind of be ready to see when somebody is like not happy with meetings and they just want to, I don't know, some people prefer instant messaging, some people prefer just asynchronous communication on the Gitter channels or whatever channels we have. And in particular, there's a class of coders kind of who are just happy with it. They don't have time for meetings because they work during the day, of course. And so it's like unreasonable to ask people to show up. And then like time zones also have an impact on that. So I think we have seen a pattern emerge where some people will say, "Oh, I cannot make the meeting at that time," but turns out they cannot make that meeting ever. And maybe they'll watch it. Like for example, this meeting here, there's a lot of people that I know that will just watch it whenever they can, but they cannot come. They cannot come here because they have work, or it's just an awkward time for them, or maybe in their time zone is the middle of the night, kind of stuff. So I think we need to acknowledge this, that there is a class of contributors that are, some of which are very productive, very good, incredible contributions, even to Geppetto or the WormSim, and it just doesn't work for everybody to jump into an hangout or to do a meeting, even one-on-one. Like, they don't even do that. It just doesn't work. They just want to look at the code and talk to you on a chat channel kind of stuff. And then they'll go off for a week or two and come back, "Oh, look, I implemented compression for the cluster and the stuff." And you didn't even know that guy. Yeah. I mean, we had a few meetings with David, and he's a great guy, but he's got a job, is busy, and do it in his spare time. So I think acknowledging this class of contributions is important, and we should always keep it in mind when we are. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we kind of label contributors like that, but if you're coordinating a sub-project, then keep it in mind that some people don't want to do meetings, and they won't tell you. They just try not to get roped into that.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually another really good point.
Sometimes insisting on let's do a meeting, or can you make the meeting? That's a turn off. So the way around, I think, is just whatever seems to be, because at the end of the day, when somebody's contributing to the project, they're making a volunteer contribution. So whatever works for the contributor, you need to go with that. And sometimes it's not a meeting. Sometimes it's a few instant messaging sessions or emails. Can be anything.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We've gone around. I'm sort of tempted to extend the conversation, but we only have, I think, 30 minutes on our clock here, so we better use it to just go around and do some updates. So since we've come up with ideas, I think the next step of this conversation would be, are there specific best practices that we want to share with each other, and are there ways in which we could better coordinate volunteers amongst ourselves? And that's one discussion I think maybe leave for thinking about in the back of your mind, or maybe send off an email, or let's have a chat discussion about it. The other topic I think to bring up next time as well is to do another pass on integration. So for me, giving the talk this past week, caused me to again think about like the big picture of OpenWorm and where it's going and what our roadmap is. And the other aspect I think of our sub teams right now, what's effective is that our sub teams have been able to get things done, and we've been able to bring more people to bear on all the various aspects. So I talked about movement validation. I talked about the connectome work. I talked about the cybernetic work, and I talked about the worm sim, and all those things are pieces. But one of the challenges of these sub teams is that I think when we originally started, we all had a very unified picture of how we were going to work together and coordinate. And as we've gone on, I think a lot of us have turned our attention outward to how do we keep our teams doing their own thing. But I think we need to raise the question again of integration and how do we close the loops between these things again. And is there more than just doing this meeting and giving updates that we need, possibly to do that? Possibly we need to turn this into a working meeting for integration rather than what's new with the different things. But I think that would be a good topic to take up next month as we focus on this because yeah, people want to know. So when are you going to get to the next step? And I'm always like, well, it's happening, but it's just sort of slow. Does anybody else want to comment on anything before we just do the updates? Right, great. So thanks, guys, for this, and the notes are there, and so let's think more about what best practice we can do in the next meeting. Okay, so now I will be quiet, and let's see what's next. So looks like on the agenda from last time was a worm sim update. So Joe, do you want to update us on anything with that?
Yeah, it's quick this time. So just wrapping up some OPEC cards this week with Sergey. We closed a card where the activation signals for the muscle cells were corrupted. The data was a bit corrupted, so that's fixed now, and it's in development. When Geppetto releases, we'll also merge that into the master repository. So at the end of this week, so that's going to go in with the next release. And then another thing that's going on, we're slowly rolling it out to everybody other than the kind of beta testers group. And one activity that I've been involved with in the last couple of weeks was automating the process of rolling it out to the rest of the backers. And because like initially for the beta testers it was manually, it was like maybe 10 accounts at a time. So I personally went there and created the accounts and sent emails to people. But now we're talking about sending it out to a couple hundred people, and so I wrote a bunch of scripts to automate account creation and email notifications and stuff, and password creation, all that stuff. So after we do this release with this last couple of bugs and improvements, we're going to start rolling it out to the people who don't already have an account. And that's the update. I don't think there's any other news. There's still a few cards open. If you go to Waffle board and the worm syntax, there's going to be a bunch of stuff there we're still working on, but we iteratively improve it and release new stuff as we go.
Awesome.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, do we track stats on how many people have tried out the WormSim app? How many people have created a worm and all that?
Yeah, analytics. I think of the beta testers, there's very few that haven't done that. But that's a good question. Like, I don't have an automated way to tell you how many people actually went through the worm creation process.
It's about 90%, I'd say.
I have to go and look at the database, but
oh, I see. So we haven't rolled it out to our full, list of backers yet. So until we do that, so once we do that, I guess then we'll see what percent of our 799 backers end up creating a worm. I'm just curious, not that it matters terribly, but
right now there are like 48 accounts. I think between 40 and 50 accounts. I can't remember exactly outside. So and some of these were backers. And we asked some of the backers, say, do you want to be a beta testers? And they said yes. So we got feedback. improved it like that. But then now it's going out to the wider audience, and one thing that it's not 799 because not everybody pledged for the WormSim reward, right? So actually, the total accounts that are gonna go out are another 200 and something, 200 and in that neighborhood. So those accounts are gonna go out this month. And that's it. So yes, after they all go out, then we can run some stats. It's on the custom. So basically, we're using this user account system called StormPath, and there's custom data associated to each account. So you can go there and look, and you can do it programmatically. So you can write a Python script and check the custom data for. It's very easy. It's the same API that I'm using for automating the account creation stuff. I can just iterate through all the accounts and check if the worm is a name kind of stuff. And if it does, then it means that they go through the process. But yes, so we can definitely do that.
Awesome. Okay, very good. Let's go on to Geppetto. Thank you, Joe.
Very briefly, working on release 0.2.7. I plan to release it this Friday. So there is going to be quite a lot of bug fixing that went in, and probably a few more bugs will make it in tomorrow. And yes, there is going to be one of the main things. There's going to be support for SWC morphologies as well, as that's going to be used by the Virtual Fly Brain project. And yeah, let me see, what else did I write on the agenda earlier on? Yeah, no, this is pretty much it. I linked to the agenda also the last meeting minutes for the meeting, and also there was a proposal at the last Geppetto meeting to start a blog on Geppetto to help people basically do posts to have some examples, helping people with setting up some things for the development environment, something complementary to the documentation. So we went ahead and we created this, some place to share screenshots, etc. Something linked also to the Twitter account. So we created that, although there's not a lot of content there yet. It's but the URL is blog.geppetto.org. So there are a couple of posts in the draft that as contributors are writing, and that's good because it helps gather more people.
Cool. All right. Very good. So there's a block here on OpenWorm and ChannelWorm, which I already kind of updated on. But one other thing that didn't get mentioned here that would have been under Travis's update is that Travis has started work on a OpenWorm paper. And I think he put effort into it before he took off for Imperial, where he's at now. And I don't know how much bandwidth he's going to have going forward on it, and I still need to read his draft, actually. But I know that he's made some progress on it, and excited to move that forward. So when it is at a state that it is more shareable with folks, I think we'll be asking for additional feedback on it. But that is something in progress as well. Yeah, he started it 2 weeks ago, and I literally have not checked in on it. But that is something that will be coming out of the stuff from last summer as well. So. Okay, DevoWorm.
Yeah. So we've kind of in the last month, I've kind of split the project into two tracks and given them names. One is the developmental dynamics, which is Richard Gordon, myself, and it's basically just the data analysis aspect. And then Tom is focusing on the morphozoic component, which I can't remember what I'm calling that. Oh, digital morphogenesis. So, like, this is purely simulation. So, and then I mentioned in keeping track of projects that we are producing updates like slideshows with videos, so people can look at that. It's on the website. Let me type that in, the location of it, and I'm just kind of keeping everything in that, like, as a progress report, and then it's like OpenWorm. You'll see the link to it, and then so Tom presented on Morphozoic, which at this point he's got a couple of benchmarks that he's working on. He's working on Turing diffusion reaction morphogenesis. He has a demo of that, which is where you have Alan Turing, he developed this model of morphogenesis where you can create like spots or stripes from a bunch of molecules that are at a random state, and they self-organize into these patterns. And so that's very relevant to development and developmental pattern formation. He might be investigating some aspects of the insect ommatidia, which is the photoreceptors on the eye of the insect. So Richard Gordon has some data on Drosophila eyes, and Tom might be able to analyze that with this program to see if we can get some information about developmental processes. He's also done a little bit of work on like embryogenesis and pattern formation there. So take a look at that. As for the developmental dynamics, I've been working on some analyses. So I actually have been working on some data analysis of C. elegans data. So we have the embryogenetic data for C. elegans, and we've also have from the C. squirt, which is Siona intestinalis, and it has a similar type of development. And so what I have up on the website is a slideshow showing some of the comparative analyses there, comparing the two different organisms. They have a very similar type of development and the types of information you can extract from that. And then we're working on some manuscripts for that as well. They're sort of in the planning stages, but there'll be more information on that as we go along.
Awesome. Yeah, you're making me think about this whole data analysis thing, and we are so focused on code production, and it's like we should probably have in these meetings, a parallel update. We all probably need to figure out how to have a parallel update to the one you're giving, which is like, yeah, we tried running the model today, and here's what came out, and we tried hooking this into that, or we ran these 5 data sets through the pipeline, and here's what came out, kind of thing. And I think it's a matter of us just devoting some focus to that. So I don't know. I'm going to be continuing thinking about that. But anyway, thanks for the update. It's stimulating some thought. All right. Let's go to movement validation.
Okay. So speaking of data analysis, a focus that I've had recently has been trying to migrate movement validation from being one unitary, unified Python package that you import and then perform operations on, like converting a file of skeleton movement data to a bunch of features, to a bunch of statistics, and instead moving it to an architecture where there is a server and there is a client. And the server and client can both be processes hosted on your local machine. That's one use case that's been highlighted as something that people want. Another use case, of course, that I've been hinting at in the past is the cloud use case, where the server is hosted by OpenWorm in the cloud, and then users can make requests through the client piece of it on their machine, their local machine. So the idea there is that if the computation aspect and the heavy lifting is being done on the server side, then the client side can be relatively light, and then we can perform data analysis on really, really big amounts of data without forcing the person doing the data analysis to have a huge amount of data sitting on their local machine. So this seems like a really compelling use case in my mind, to have all this data somewhere else. Given that it's terabytes and terabytes of worm movement data, we've encountered the difficulties ourselves of moving around this data, having to physically mail it from one place to another. I think they call that a sneaker net. We've had this sneaker net going on, and it'd be nice to have it so we can perform analysis without having to physically move hard drives around. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I can also mention that Jim has been working on the refactoring process, kind of changing the way that we look at features within movement validation. His work is basically done, and it's waiting on someone, likely me, to link that to our statistics code, which he didn't change. So that's just some internal work that needs to be done within movement validation.
Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and put ourselves on the hook, Michael. So Michael is actually visiting me in San Diego this weekend, and we have ambitious goals to make progress on things. One of which being this. I'm gonna point him at the hard drives that are been sitting in my apartment, laying fallow, and
I'm bringing my sneakers.
Good. So I don't know that we absolutely need to move it out of here, but possibly that could be a solution. But also, possibly we could just hack on what a solution should look like, or I don't know what. I think there should be some great progress coming out of that weekend. So I'm looking forward to having you in San Diego and doing some good work on that stuff.
Actually, can I ask you guys a question relating to what I just said about this client-server architecture, where the huge amount of the data is sitting on the server, and then the client is making API requests to analyze the data. Can you guys think of like some obvious examples of other applications that use this architecture that I could use sort of as a model when I'm looking at it? Can you guys think of any other open source projects that do this kind of thing?
I can think of one, Geppetto, but
sure.
It does exactly that, right? I'll keep thinking if I can think of any other examples, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to copy the stack, but that's exactly what Geppetto does.
You guys take it even a step further because your client is even friendlier than a Python API. It's the browser with the user interface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, but there is a REST API that you can interrogate the server just with HTTP requests, right?
Fair enough.
So you could build your own another client on top of the backend.
Fair enough.
Michael?
Yep.
Have a look at this link I just sent there. It's the Galaxy project. I think this is something along the lines of what you want. That's quite popular in bioinformatics, whereby it's sitting on the server. You perform analyses. You can share workflows and so on. I haven't used it myself, but I've heard about it a few times from people within the bioinformatics community.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe also like I don't know, any kind of like client server where there's data involved, like a Virtuoso RDF server comes to mind, and like an HDF5 server also comes to mind. Those are sort of simpler examples because they're basically focused on a single data type, but maybe some other things to look at.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. So looks like we'll skip over the cybernetic update and go straight to Porg's update.
Am I still breaking up?
Okay.
Okay. Just very quickly, a few things I've not managed to do very much on OpenWorm. one thing I did get done finally was implementing analog synapses, which will be needed for the detailed biophysical model and also the point neuron model. So these basically are different from the synapses which are there at the moment in C302 and the Neuroconstruct project, in that these are continuously releasing, and this had been missing for a long time from LEMS and NeuromL2. It's finally implemented in NeuromL2 and LEMS. I haven't mapped it onto Neuron yet, but I've done some initial tests with C302, and now we can get these continuously releasing synapses between cells, so it's much more physiologically realistic. They should work also for multi-compartmental models. It introduces a bunch of new parameters that you'd have to tune, but in theory, this is hopefully going to make the potential networks a lot more physiologically realistic. We don't have to make the assumptions that the neurons have to spike, which was the case with the previous implementations. So that's just been implemented in the last week or two, so I'm just still testing that, and hopefully it can be incorporated into the tuning for the network model. The other thing I've been doing that's related to this is the tuning library, which was built on Mike Bella's PyElectro and NeuroTune. This was being used for tuning some of the networks in C302. It's also been imported into PyNeuromL, so now you can point at a generic NeuromL model. You can do some analyses on the data you want to tune against using PyElectro, and use NeuroTune to optimize your model using having it all in pure Python. So those libraries are slowly moving forward, but they'll definitely be of use when we're tuning the C302 model. One other quick update, I presented OpenWorm and Open Source Brain at a training course I was at last week, which was bioinformatics for the neuroscientist, and which Nicola Limover organized, and went down quite well. But most of the people there were bioinformaticians, and yeah, they were very interested, particularly in OpenWorm. We'll see if anybody contacts us about that. One final thing, I've been working on getting some of the cell models that are going to soon be released by the Blue Brain project into NeuromL format, and also some of the Allen Institute cell types database models into NeuromL, and that's slowly progressing, but that's another bunch of cells that hopefully will be available in NeuromL2 format quite soon and can be tested with all the other tools here, Geppetto, OSB Visualizer, and everything else. So that's easy.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. So thanks everybody for the updates. I think we kind of got around them pretty quickly, which is great. So yeah, I think let's start thinking about the integration question next. You know, a lot of things have happened since the last time we took up the discussion. We've released WormSim. I think there's been some significant progress in releasing stuff on the human validation side. You know, Geppetto has leveled up quite a bit. And there's been, you know, a whole summer of hackathon progress to get a new connectome in and to kind of upgrade PyOpenWorm and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, again, giving the talk on the project, like, it might be the easiest for us to forget how cool this, how cool the opportunity is that we have here, and to kind of get ourselves, like, I think I get myself focused on some of the minutia sometimes, or some of the things that are, you know, cool side elements of this whole thing. But yet again, we still have the opportunity to do what we said we did, what we were going to do, which is to have a body simulation of a worm, to plug a simulated nervous system into it, and to compare it to ground truth with a bunch of movies. And so what I want to take up next time is for us to go back to the integration map that Matteo started and has now iterated on once, I think, and to just take a step back and say, okay, well, really, what do we need? Like, are we going to run this whole pipeline in Geppetto for example? Like, is Geppetto going to be adequate for us to plug C302 into, the worm model? Is the worm model going to run in Geppetto, or is it going to run in cybernetic? And are we going to plug it in that way? And is that our best? Obviously these things can proceed in parallel, but like, where are we going to put the energies not only of ourselves but of the various volunteers that come and join us over the course of the next several months? Where is the best place for their efforts? And then is Geppetto going to be the place that's going to process out the skeleton of the of the worm, and is it going to then hand that over to moving validation, or what? So I don't know. Sorry, you were going to say something, Matteo?
No, I suggest that we make this the topic of our next monthly.
Yes, exactly.
That we give the updates at the end if there is time, but that we make sure that to give like the bulk of the meeting to discuss this point, because I think it's good for all of us to know what is happening. Like you mentioned, for instance, cybernetic, and I'm working with Sergey, and he's hooking up cybernetic so that we can use it directly in Geppetto without the porting that we had previously. One thing that came to mind as you were saying that, so will that be able to run? Yes. So we should definitely have the time. I would say next monthly sounds good.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm just seeding in everybody's minds, but as you have your own separate meetings over the course of this month, like, let's be thinking about what we can bring back to the table for integration. I will make one other point. I saw, because I've been meeting with Andre and Sergey on the paper, I've seen some latest developments in cybernetic, which unfortunately, because he's not here, doesn't have a chance to present. But he's improved the viscous liquid such that now it's a lot more like actual agar gel that the worm sort of sits in and kind of carves out a gap in it as it moves through it. And so that's much more. I've also seen him be able to bend the worm all the way around, so it almost begins to do an omega turn without like blowing up and breaking. So, I mean, he's been making a lot of progress on that stuff too, as that's been going on. So yet another thing for the integration melting pot. But, okay, excellent. Well, thank you guys so much, as always, for being here and giving the updates and making this thing move forward. And I'll see you all online over the course of the month, and then see you back here again for our next meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Cheers.